The Feedstock to Tailpipe Initiative represents what TRI is about. We really are looking at doing research that would be transformative. We want to look at using feedstocks that are socially responsible and economically viable so that the things that we do only have a positive impact on Kansas as well as the nation as a whole. The Feedstock to Tailpipe Initiative looks at starting with algae and turning them into fuels, testing those fuels in engines, and then assessing the impact of the emissions and the fuels on the environment. The nice thing about using algae as a feedstock is it has the highest potential oil yield per acre of material.
One of the things you might ask is, why is it we're working with algae? The advantages are we have economy of scale because they're small and they're ubiquitous all over the world. For the Biofuels Initiative, we're most interested in the component of algae, which is the fats, kind of the lipids, trying to maximize the yield of lipids that we get from these algae. And we can then basically ask the question, what conditions in that tank give the best yield? And it could be that some species of algae are better at producing lipids than others. So this is part of tweaking the assembly line to getting the product we want.
In the lab, I have small lab scale reactors. They're 2 to 3 liter, and I control the nutrient content. And in the field, I just feed the same concentration. So every 3 to 4 days, I can really turn over my population. Producing the algae is one step. Extracting the oil is the second step. It will be much more convenient, much more efficient if we find an extraction method that doesn't require an additional step.
The research that I do is looking at taking the feedstocks that are produced and converting those into fuels that then could be used in anything right now that burns fuel to run. So there would be really, very little engine modification that would be required to be able to run these types of fuels. The other thing that we're looking at doing is trying to make sure that we minimize any waste that we have in the process. When you start to remove the oil from that, you're left with a lot of other byproducts and turning them into higher value products.
My research is taking these new fuels and burning them in the engine. You're measuring outputs such as the amount of horsepower, the amount of torque that's coming out of the engine. The major one is miles per gallon. If we see data that illustrates that the engine is not operating that efficiently, we have to go back to the chemical transformation group. And if there was something that we can do to readjust the processing of that fuel or the blending of that fuel to make it even better. And at the same time, while these engine performance studies are going on, the downstream side is looking at the emissions that are coming out. They have to meet the Environmental Protection Agency requirements.
One of the first things we need to do is look at, can we meet the standards? And then the second question, of course, is, can we be even better? So we have essentially 2 types of testing systems. We connect the tailpipe of that generator to a series of emissions equipment that monitor both gas phase emissions, and then a second system that monitors particulate emissions. Fitting emissions into the rest of the process is essentially a matter of looking at where can we make changes. If we see higher nitrogen oxide levels because of fuel nitrogen, can we go back to Val or Belinda and say, is there a way we can run this to reduce the total amount of nitrogen coming into the fuel stream originally? Not just to keep the engine going, but a fuel that's the best it can be for emissions, for production, and for overall impact on the environment as well.
As we burn biofuels, we'll be producing CO2, but at the same time, we'll be also growing more biofuel that is drawing down CO2. In collaboration with Nate Brunsell in the Geography Department, we can use tools like remote sensing to try to assess the degree to which land cover is changing as a result of biofuel production, because the resulting carbon dynamics have huge global implications.
It's just really exciting to sit around and be able to listen to all these people interact with each other and share ideas and come up with new directions that as an individual we never would have been able to come with on our own. To be able to look at this project and say what I'm doing has not only fundamental science associated with that, but here's the impact that I'm going to have 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, that's what's really exciting.